Twin sisters from Virginia vanished during what was supposed to be a dream cruise holiday, shattering their single mother's world beyond repair. 10 months later, a battered suitcase washed ashore, and what it held inside would send shockwaves. Through everyone who saw it, Rachel Marin sat alone in the dim glow of her small Charlottesville living room, surrounded by the wreckage of a 10-month investigation that had led only to dead ends. Missing persons flyers, bearing the identical beaming faces of her daughters, littered the coffee table, some curled at the edges from constant, handling others bleached by sunlight she no longer bothered to block. Across the room, police reports. In case files teetered in uneven stacks, a grim archive she'd memorized word for word. Beside her armchair, a neat pile of unopened sympathy cards sat untouched. To open them felt too much like surrender, like admitting the girls were gone forever. She rubbed her tired eyes and set aside the file. She'd been rereading for the 100th time, the one that documented the 4th day of their cruise. When 8-year-olds Lily and Millie had simply vanished, her gaze drifted to the stack of envelopes. Maybe today she would open one. Maybe today she would allow herself to feel what everyone else already believed, that her daughters were never coming home. Her fingertips brushed an envelope just as her phone rang. The caller ID made her pulse jump. Detective Mace Alvarez. Detective, any news? She asked, her voice fragile with a hope she had been told to let go of months ago. She braced for the usual. A false lead, an unverifiable sighting, a polite check-in. But Alvarez's tone was different this time, tighter, controlled, and beneath it something darker. "I've just had a call from the police department in Ocracoke Island, North Carolina," he said. Rachel sat up straight. "What kind of call?" There was a pause. "I need to warn you, this is disturbing. A local fisherman found a suitcase containing human remains. We believe it may be one of your daughters." The room tilted. Rachel's hand clenched the phone until her knuckles blanched. She whispered, "I can't explain everything over the phone," Alvarez continued. "We're flying to North Carolina together. The suitcase also contained personal items we need you to identify immediately." When Rachel asked already, standing her legs unsteady, "I'll be at your house in an hour. The evidence is being held at a forensic lab attached to the sheriff's department. They're waiting for us before proceeding further." When the call ended, Rachel realized tears had streaked down her cheeks. She moved like someone in a dream, packing an overnight bag without quite feeling her hands. Memories from 10 months ago surged up unbidden. The cruise she'd worked overtime to afford, meant to give her daughters the kind of memories she'd never had. She saw again the small shipboard restaurant where they'd eaten after an afternoon swim. It had been quiet, the dining room, mostly empty at 3:30 p.m. She'd left the girls for 5 minutes. Just 5 to take.
A call outside. Where the reception was better, when she came back, they were gone. The staff remembered seeing the twins
leave, but no one could say where they'd gone. The next hours were a blur of panic. Rachel tearing through every deck, every hallway, every hidden corner of the vast ship. A ship-wide alert went out. Crew searched public areas, kids' clubs, pools, bathrooms even locked, and unassigned cabins. Security footage showed the girls watching a poolside performance. And then as the crowd dispersed, they simply disappeared from view. Hours of CCTV review revealed nothing more. After 24 hours, the ship's flag state was notified. The U.S. Coast Guard, the FBI, and local port authorities launched a formal investigation. Head counts, lockdowns, passenger interviews, nothing. Despite the exhaustive search, Lily and Millie vanished as though the ocean had swallowed them whole. Some passengers had whispered in hushed tones that the twins must have fallen overboard. Others speculated they'd been taken during a port stop. The cruise line swore its security protocols were airtight, but the fact remained: 2 8-year-old girls had vanished into thin air, and no one could explain how. An hour passed without. Rachel, noticing her thoughts circling in a fog of dread and exhaustion, a sudden knock at the door yanked her back to the present. She grabbed her overnight bag, her heart drumming in her ears, and opened it to find Detective Alvarez standing there. His expression was controlled, but his eyes carried the weight of what they were about to face. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Rachel nodded and locked her door. As they crossed to his unmarked car, she drew a steadying breath. 10 months of uncertainty had led to this moment. Ahead lay either the worst truth a mother could imagine, or the first tangible clue in a nightmare with no end. The flight to North Carolina passed in heavy silence. Rachel kept her gaze fixed on the airplane window, watching the world below shift from crowded city blocks to the open, lonely coastal plains of the Outer Banks. Alvarez respected her quiet, occasionally glancing up from his tablet of case files to check if she was holding together. At the small regional airport, a local officer was waiting to drive them to a modest sheriff's substation. A squat, single-story brick building tucked behind a screen of wind-bent pine trees. This is the nearest facility, with a forensics lab capable of handling the evidence, Alvarez explained as they approached. Inside, the air was chilled and sterile, the faint tang of disinfectant clinging to the back of Rachel's throat. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a clinical pallor on the hallways. A deputy led them through a maze of corridors to a secured room. Before they entered, Alvarez placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Prepare yourself. What you're about to see will be difficult." Rachel could only nod, her throat too tight for words. Masks and sterile gowns were handed to them. Inside the examination room, a weathered man in his 50s stood off too, the side speaking quietly with an officer. His skin was darkened from years of sun, his hands rough with calluses. "Mrs. Marin," Sheriff said, "this is Curtis Bannister, the fisherman who found the suitcase." Bannister stepped forward, his expression caught between sympathy and discomfort. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am," he said gruffly. "I wish I'd found anything else that day." Rachel gave the smallest nod before her gaze was pulled. To the center of the room, on a large stainless steel table, sat the suitcase. Medium-sized, square, and ravaged by the sea, its once blue fabric had faded to a dull, stormy gray, seems bloated and warped from salt water and sun. A medical examiner stood nearby. "Mrs. Marin," he began, "we've documented everything, exactly as it was found. I'll show you the contents now." Rachel gripped the edge of a metal counter as the lid creaked open. Her breath hitched. Tears welled instantly. Inside lay the badly decomposed remains of a small child. 10 months in ocean currents had left the body bloated, discolored, and partially skeletal. But the child had been wrapped in layers of clothing, enough to preserve a few hauntingly familiar details. "The victim appears to have died from asphyxiation," the examiner said, his voice clinical. "No blunt force injuries, no sharp wounds, no blood. Likely quick and quiet." Rachel barely heard him. Her eyes were locked on a faded red Minnie Mouse t-shirt, the same one Millie had worn on the cruise. Beneath the remains, a pair of blue swim goggles peeked out the initial, and still faint along the side. "That's Millie's shirt," Rachel whispered, her voice breaking. "Those are her goggles. I bought matching pairs for both girls. Millie's had an M raise." "Had an R," the examiner nodded. "We'll need a DNA sample from you for confirmation, though your identification of these items is compelling." "Yes," Rachel said numbly, "but I don't need DNA to know. That's my daughter." Alvarez placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. The examiner reached for another evidence bag. "There's something else," he said, "an item that doesn't belong to a child." Inside was a tarnished silver Zippo lighter, still intact, despite seawater damage. On its side, engraved initials, "K." "This wasn't theirs," Rachel said immediately. "They were 8. They wouldn't have had something like this." "Our first real lead," Alvarez murmured, "an anomaly that might point us to the killer." Rachel turned to Bannister. "Mr. Bannister, tell me exactly how you found it." "Shifted uncomfortable. Walking the beach, like I do most mornings. Saw something washed up that didn't look like the usual debris. When I got closer, the smell hit me. I opened it just enough to see, and called the police right away."
"Anything
else?" Rachel asked, desperation edging her voice. "Any sign of my other daughter?" Bannister shook his head. "Just the suitcase, ma'am. I'm sorry." Rachel's gaze darted to Alvarez. "Why put Millie in a suitcase and throw it into the ocean? They wanted to get rid of her." "Not make sure it sank?" The sheriff answered. "This type of suitcase is buoyant when submerged. If it wasn't properly weighted down, it would eventually float, drifting until someone found it." "What happens now?" Rachel asked, glancing. Between the officers, her voice steady but edged with unease. "We process everything," Alvarez replied. "The suitcase is an older model, uncommon these days. It makes it easier to trace where it was sold and maybe who bought it. Same goes for the Zippo lighter." Asterisk, the sheriff pointed to a partially peeled price sticker clinging to the lighter's base. "There's a store logo here." "It's not one I recognize." "Definitely not a major chain, but it could be a lead." Rachel leaned in, her brow furrowing. "That pattern. I've seen it before, but I can't place it." She reached for her phone. "I take some photos?" "Of course," the sheriff said. "We'll also send you digital copies of all evidence, shots, and reports." Rachel snapped pictures while Alvarez discussed next steps with the locals. With these findings, he told them, "We're officially moving from a missing persons case to a homicide investigation. Coordinate with the cruise line again. Re-examine every second of security footage and re-interview all key personnel from that day. We'll also map the ship's route against ocean currents to pinpoint where the suitcase may have been dumped." The sheriff added, "Our forensics team will complete analysis of the remains and all items. DNA testing has already begun."
Alvarez
Turned to Rachel, "We'll need you nearby for a few days. More statements will help as we move forward." Rachel wiped away a tear, squaring her shoulders. "I understand, but before I go anywhere, I want to see the beach where the suitcase was found." Alvarez hesitated, trading a glance with the sheriff. "Are you sure that's wise?" "Have to," she said, her voice now carrying a quiet force. I need to stand there. If I'm going to find my other daughter, I have to face this." After a pause, Alvarez nodded. "All right, should see the location too. Can take you," Bannister offered. "My boat's nearby, and some of the team's still on site." Rachel met his eyes. "Thank you." The ride to Ocracoke Island took less than an hour by boat. Rachel sat at the bow, her face turned into the sting of salt spray as Bannister guided them over restless water between the barrier islands and the mainland. Alvarez sat beside her, alternating between updates on his phone and quietly studying her expression. "It's just ahead," Bannister called over the engine's growl, pointing to a lonely stretch of shoreline. "That's where I found it." From the water, Rachel spotted a small gathering on the beach. Yellow police tape fluttered in the wind, enclosing a section of sand where uniformed officers moved deliberately, snapping photographs, measuring distances. A news van waited on a nearby access road, the reporter and cameraman keeping their distance but watching intently. Bannister eased the boat to a narrow dock. The wood creaked under their steps as they came ashore. "This way," he said, leading them onto the beach. The sand was cool underfoot, damp from the retreating tide. An officer lifted the tape to let them pass, nodding respectfully to Alvarez. "Mrs. Marin," he said quietly, "we're very sorry for your loss." Rachel barely acknowledged him. Her eyes were locked on the shallow depression where the suitcase had rested. The case itself was gone, but the void it left had been preserved. "A scar in the sand?" "Right here," Bannister said, stopping. "It was just lying there as the tide went out." Rachel stared at the spot, the beauty of the remote shore twisting into something unbearable. She crouched down, fingers pressing into the cool, wet grit. "There has to be more," she whispered. "Something else that tells us where she came from, where she's been." Alvarez knelt beside her, a steady hand on her shoulder. "The team's been thorough, Rachel. This is the biggest lead we've had in 10 months. We will find her." A few yards away, the reporter had spotted them. Her eyes widened and she spoke urgently to the cameraman, angling for the moment. Alvarez spotted the reporter approaching and frowned. "Let me handle the press," he murmured, rising to his feet. "You take a moment here." While Alvarez strode toward the cameras, Bannister stayed behind with Rachel. For a few seconds, they sat in respectful silence, the crash of waves filling the air. "There's a small cabin resort nearby," Bannister said at last. "Quiet place. You could stay there tonight before heading back to the mainland tomorrow. The owner's right over there." He tilted his head toward a middle-aged man among the onlookers beyond the police tape. Rachel brushed the tears from her cheeks and slowly stood. "I think I'd like that. I'm not ready to leave yet." "I understand," Bannister replied gently. "When my son vanished in a boating accident 5 years ago, I couldn't leave the harbor for weeks. Sometimes you just need to be close to the last place they were." Rachel's eyes met his, a sudden understanding passing between them. Did you ever find him? Bannister's gaze drifted toward the sea. The ocean keeps its secrets. But at least I know where to go when I want to talk to him. When Alvarez returned, Rachel explained her plan. He considered her for a moment, then nodded. All right. But I'm assigning an officer to stay with you overnight. Till we know exactly what happened to your daughters, we can't take chances. Signaled a female officer who had been combing the scene. Officer Martinez will escort you to the cabins and remain there with you. Rachel thanked him, then followed Bannister over to meet the cabin owner, Greg Harrison, a genial man with wind-chapped cheeks and an easy smile. He offered his condolences and assured her there was plenty of space. It's off-season, Harrison said, as he led them toward a cluster of beachfront cabins. You'll have all the privacy you need. The cabin was plain but tidy. A single room with a queen bed, a compact kitchenette, and a small bathroom. A covered porch faced the restless sea to weathered. Adirondack chairs angled toward the surf. After setting her bag down, Rachel drifted to the porch. Officer Martinez positioned herself nearby, close enough to protect, far enough to give space. A young waitress appeared moments later, pressing a steaming mug into Rachel's hands. On the house, she said softly, "I'm so sorry about your daughter," Rachel murmured her thanks, curling her fingers around the warmth. The ocean in front of her rolled on in its eternal rhythm, the same water that had carried Millie's body to shore, utterly indifferent to human grief. As the sun sagged toward the horizon, Rachel noticed movement across the sandy path. A man stepped from the cabin opposite hers, patting his pockets as if making sure nothing was forgotten. He set a bag on the outdoor table, locked his door, and began. Walking toward the main office, something glinted in the sunlight. On his coffee table sat a crumpled cigarette pack and a lighter. Drawn by a prickle of curiosity, Rachel crossed over and picked them up. She turned the lighter over and froze. A price sticker clung to the bottom, its store logo, identical to the partial sticker on the evidence lighter, recovered with Millie's remains. Her pulse spiked. The man was still headed for the front desk when she hurried after him. "Excuse me? You forgot this." Turned startled, then smiled when he saw what she carried. "Thanks. Would have kicked myself for losing that." Rachel pointed to the sticker, keeping her voice even. "Where'd you get this?" "I collect vintage lighters, been hunting for this brand." "Oh, that's from a tiny kiosk in Greenville," he said easily. "Place is called Carnes's Corner News. Old guy runs it, sells all kinds of random stuff." "Why? You from around there?" "No, there's a similar shop where I live in Charlottesville." Might be the same chain, she lied, though her heartbeat was now hammering in her ears. Asterisk, before he could answer, a resort staff member arrived carrying a square suitcase, the exact same size, color, and style as the one that had held her daughter's remains. "Sir, you sure you want to leave this behind? We found it in your cabin." Rachel's breath caught. "Where'd you get that?" The words burst from her before she could rein them in. "Same place as the lighter." The man chuckled. "The kiosk owner gave it to me cheap when I bought the lighter. Used it once, but the handle broke." "Junk, really? Want it?" Rachel swallowed hard. "Yes. I know it sounds strange, but yes. Be my guest," he said with a dismissive wave. She accepted it, then asked your name, contact info. Hesitated, then complied. "Jeff Thornton." "Why the interest in my old junk?" Rachel met his eyes. "I'm here with the police. One of my daughters was found in a suitcase just like this." His face paled. "God, I'm so sorry. I hope they find whoever's responsible. Your information about the kiosk may be more important than you realize." As Thornton hurried off to catch his ferry, Rachel returned to her cabin, clutching the suitcase. Her mind was racing. Officer Martinez's eyes followed her, but she stayed silent. Rachel set the suitcase down, pulled out her phone, and dialed Alvarez's number. Her fingers trembled as she waited. "I haven't left yet," Alvarez said when he picked up. Rachel's voice was taut with urgency as she relayed the story: the tourist lighter, the battered suitcase, and their unsettling link to a newspaper. "Kiosk in Greenville. Asterisk. I need to see this immediately. Don't move, Alvarez. Ordered over the line. I'll come to you. 15 minutes later, Rachel stood at the windswept shoreline with Officer Martinez. A distant hum of an approaching motor grew louder until Alvarez appeared, Curtis Bannister at his side. Both men looked grave, locked in a low conversation. As they neared, Rachel caught sight of a news van pulling away, its reporter apparently satisfied for the day. "Show me what you found," Alvarez said without preamble. Rachel led him into her cabin, where the suitcase sat in the corner like an uninvited guest. She described the lighter, the price sticker still clinging to its side, and explained how Jeff Thornton, the tourist, had bought both items from a Greenville kiosk called Carnes Corner News. Alvarez's gaze sharpened. Carnes? Tone suggested more than casual recognition. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, I need full intel on Carnes Corner News in Greenville. Owner, address, history, all of it." As they waited, Rachel recounted Thornton's description. An older man always running side deals, selling things that didn't quite fit the shop's inventory. "If this suitcase matches the one Millie was found in," Rachel said, "and that lighter's from the same store as the one engraved with her initials. This isn't chance." Alvarez inspected the suitcase with a slow, deliberate hand. "This could be the crack we've been waiting for." The radio hissed to life. Detective Alvarez. Carnes Corner News is owned by Douglas Carnes, 57. 3 locations: Greenville, Charlotte, and a new one opening in Virginia Beach. Transmitting addresses now. A moment later, Alvarez glanced at his phone. "We still have daylight. Let's pay this kiosk a visit." They boarded the police boat, Bannister volunteering to steer them back. The return trip felt shorter, the engine straining under the weight of urgency. On the mainland, Alvarez commandeered a patrol car and headed straight for the Greenville address. The kiosk stood alone in a strip mall parking lot, the kind of place that sold everything and nothing. Newspapers, lottery tickets, candy bars, and the occasional oddity. Behind the counter, a wiry man in his 30s stacked cigarettes. "We're closing soon," he said flatly. Alvarez flashed his badge. "Detective Alvarez, Virginia State Police. Are you the owner?" "No, sir. I just work here. Mr. Carnes owns the place, but he's hardly ever around. Maybe once a week tops. Contact information?" After a pause, the clerk produced a business card from under the counter. Rachel's eyes swept the shop. "You sell Zippo lighters?" "There," the man said, pointing to a glass case. Inside sat lighters identical to Millie's. Same brand, same model, just different designs and no engraving. Alvarez pulled up a photo of the engraved one on his phone. "Ever seen this exact lighter?" The clerk studied the screen. "It looks like ours. People get them engraved all the time after buying." "What about suitcases?" Rachel pressed. The clerk frowned. "We don't sell luggage." "Maybe Mr. Carnes brought one in on his own. He sometimes hawks personal stuff here." "I don't ask questions." "Appreciate your help," Alvarez said. "If Carnes shows up, don't mention we came by." Back in the car, Rachel said quietly we should swing past his house. Alvarez hesitated, then nodded. "We can look. From the street, no warrant means no entry." They rolled into a quiet neighborhood of small, tidy homes. Carnes's address matched a pale yellow bungalow with white trim and a manicured lawn. A single car sat in the driveway. "Look at the plate," Rachel whispered. "First 2 letters, DK, last letter, K." Alvarez's eyes narrowed. Could be his initials, or just a coincidence. They watched the house for several minutes. Curtains hung still, no sound, no movement. Back to the station, Alvarez finally said, "We'll coordinate with local units and approach this carefully. If Carnes is tied to what happened to your daughters, we'll make sure he doesn't see us coming." Rachel's jaw tightened. She wasn't leaving without answers. Rachel rubbed her temples. "I'm exhausted. Just drop me at the ferry station. I'll head back to the cabin." "I'd rather you didn't take the public ferry," Alvarez said, his voice firm. "Martinez can run you back in the police boat. It's safer and quieter." Minutes later, they rolled into the harbor where Officer Martinez waited at the dock, the patrol boat bobbing gently. Rachel was halfway to the gangway when something caught her eye. She froze, fingers tightening on Alvarez's sleeve. "That car," she hissed, pointing toward the ferry queue. Same license plate DKK. Alvarez followed her gaze. Expression darkened as he spotted the vehicle. Through its tinted rear glass shadows, shifted one clearly adult-sized, the other smaller, curled in the back. That could be anyone, he warned. Don't jump too, but Rachel was already striding toward the line of cars, something primal propelling her forward. I just need to see who's inside. Rachel, wait, Alvarez called, but she was moving too fast. The ticket officer was checking each vehicle before boarding when Rachel reached him. The driver's window slid down, handing over tickets. In the back seat, a woman in her 30s had an arm clamped around a restless girl.
The child squirmed, trying to pull free.
Rachel couldn't see her face clearly, but the angle of her jaw, the shade of her hair, every detail hit like an electric shock. Rayleigh. The words slipped out, barely audible over the gulls. Alvarez caught up, gripping her arm. You can't just approach strangers. We need more than instinct. I saw her, Rachel said, shaking him off. That's my daughter. Something in her voice made Alvarez's glance toward Martinez. Stay with her, he ordered, then strode to the ticket booth. He murmured to the officer, both men stealing quick looks toward the DKK. Car now, just 3 spots from the ramp. They'll do a secondary check, Alvarez told Rachel when he returned. Her pulse thundered as the car rolled forward. At the signal, it pulled aside. The driver, a man in his 50s, grabbed his phone, talking urgently. Then, without warning, all 4 doors flung open. The man bolted. The woman yanked the girl out by the wrist. That's them, Rachel shouted, her voice cracking. They darted between cars, the man leading the child, stumbling behind the woman. Alvarez's hand flew to his radio. Suspects fleeing on foot, Ocracoke Ferry Terminal possible, kidnapping victim female child approx. 8 years old. Male suspect, female suspect, need immediate backup. The harbor officer relayed the call. Patrol cars screeched into position, sealing exits. Ferry passengers were herded toward secure zones. Alvarez ran after the suspect's weapon drawn but lowered. Police, stop, he barked. The man looked over his shoulder, saw the Bajan, sprinted harder. Officers closed in like a tightening net. 2 tackled the man as he tried scaling a fence. The woman wove through parked cars, still gripping the girl, until she found herself boxed in by drawn weapons. Let go of the child, an officer commanded. Her hesitation lasted a fraction too long. Then her hand unclamped. The girl tore free, scanning wildly until her gaze locked with Rachel's. Recognition blazed. Instantly, Mom, she screamed, her voice raw. Mom. Rachel broke from Martinez, running full tilt. She dropped too. Her knees, mid-lot, arms wrapping her daughter so tightly it hurt. Rayleigh, oh my God, Rayleigh. Her words dissolved into sobs. The child clung back, crying into her shoulder, trembling like a leaf. Alvarez approached, breathing hard eyes, both relieved and guarded. They're in custody. We need to get you somewhere secure. Asterisk. Rachel refused to let go. Who are they? Douglas Carnes, Kathy Evans, husband and wife. Rachel's head snapped up. Kathy Evans. The initials on the lighter. Alvarez's. Grim nod was answer enough. We've got their vehicle impounded. Search warrants in motion. Preliminary look, multiple suitcases in the trunk. And some things in the back seat you don't want to see. Rachel truly saw her daughter for the first time since the chaotic rescue, and the sight made her stomach twist. The little girl was painfully thin, her once fair skin unnaturally bronzed, as if someone had forced the color onto her. Her hair was cropped far shorter than Rachel had ever allowed, and her eyes, those eyes carried a haunted exhaustion. No 8-year-old should know. She needs a doctor immediately, Rachel demanded. An ambulance is already en route. Detective Alvarez assured her. Within minutes, paramedics were kneeling beside the child. She clung desperately to Rachel's hand, refusing to release it. When a medic clicked on a pen light to check her pupils, the girl flinched violently, turning her head away with a soft whimper. Please, stop taking pictures, she murmured. Rachel's gaze shot to Alvarez, who was already scribbling the comment in his notebook, his jaw tightening. Then from across the lot, officers emerged from the suspect's vehicle, their expressions grim. One approached Alvarez, speaking low enough that only Rachel, straining to hear, caught the words. We found 2 boxes of illegal magazines in the trunk, the officer said. Child-focused. And in the back seat, syringes likely filled with sedatives. Looks like they planned to drug her before getting on the ferry. Alvarez's expression hardened into stone. Get CSI here now. Photograph and catalog everything. Rachel didn't need the full explanation. The meaning slammed into her with brutal clarity, her grief over Millie igniting into white-hot rage. Breaking away from the paramedics, she strode toward Carnes, who was being shoved into a cruiser. "You monster," she shouted, her voice shaking with fury. "You didn't just smuggle your filthy magazines, you murdered my daughter? You murdered Millie?" Carnes looked up, his calmness almost inhuman. "I didn't mean to kill the other one," he said flatly. "I wanted to keep both, but my partner backed out. 2 kids alone? I couldn't manage without getting caught. I had to choose." Rachel lunged, but Alvarez caught her, yanking her back. "Save it for the station." He snapped at Carnes. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As the cruisers rolled away, a paramedic returned with an update. "She's been given a mild sedative," he reported grimly. "Malnutrition is clear. Signs of physical abuse. We need her at the hospital now." Rachel was already at her daughter's side. "I'm coming with her," she told Alvarez. "Of course. I'll meet you there after processing the suspects." "This is just the beginning, Rachel. We'll need statements from both of you when she's stable." Rachel climbed into the ambulance, never releasing her daughter's hand. Sirens wailed as the city blurred past. "It's over, Rayleigh," she whispered, stroking the girl's hair. "You're safe. It can't hurt you anymore." At the hospital, the harsh fluorescent lights made Rachel's eyes ache as she paced the corridor outside the ER. Officer Martinez stayed nearby, watchful. A nurse finally appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Marin, you can come in now." Rachel hurried. And Rayleigh looked impossibly small against the white sheets and IV line snaking into her arm. "Mom," she whispered, reaching weakly toward her. Rachel took her hand carefully. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." Dr. Patel, a woman with kind eyes shadowed by concern, stepped forward. "Mrs. Marin, she's severely malnourished. Underweight for her age. Multiple bruises, likely from a narrow stick or belt. There are marks on her wrists and ankles indicating prolonged restraint. She's unusually sensitive to light, especially flashes which supports." What she told Uche may have been photographed repeatedly for illicit purposes. Rachel closed her eyes, steadying herself. "What's the plan?" "We'll start with carefully monitored nutrition. The sedative should leave her system within a day. Physically, she'll mentally." Dr. Patel hesitated. "She'll need long-term therapy. This kind of trauma runs deep." Rachel's voice was steady. "Now, she'll get it. Whatever it takes." After the doctor left, Rachel sat by Rayleigh's bed, her fingers gently wrapped around the small hand. The girl drifted in and out of uneasy sleep, sometimes mumbling words Rachel couldn't make out. Night had fallen when Alvarez appeared at the doorway. "How is she?" Rachel stepped into the hall with him. "It's physically, she'll recover," she said. Her eyes hardened, but emotionally, it's going to be a long road. Alvarez's eyes were shadowed from a night without sleep, his voice low but urgent. "Hey, we got more out of Evans," he said. "She's talking, wants a deal." Rachel's pulse quickened. "What did she say?" "A lot," he admitted, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Carnes and Evans weren't freelancing. They were cogs in a bigger machine, an organized network producing and distributing illegal child exploitation magazines. Carnes' job was to supply the children, the rest handled production. Rachel's stomach turned to ice. "How many kids? At least 10? "Evans says they're being kept at another property Carnes owns under a false name. Teams are moving in as we speak." Her throat tightened. "And my girls? How did he get them on the cruise?" Alvarez exhaled slowly. He boarded under an alias prepaid card burner email. First day out, he stole a maintenance uniform from a locked closet, blending in as crew. Then he used a small jammer to knock out a security camera right where he took them. Rachel's nails bit into her palms. But how did he get them too? Follow him. They knew better. Evans says he'd been watching them since the start of the trip. He saw them at a magic show and used it. When he found them alone, he pulled a cheap card trick he'd learned from the ship's magicians, just enough to make them laugh and trust him. Then he led them into a crew corridor away from cameras. Rachel could see at their bright smiles, their little hands following a man who seemed kind. "And Millie," she whispered. Alvarez's expression darkened. Evans wasn't there for that part, but Carnes told her later. He planned to take both girls. But his first partner, not Evans, panicked when he realized they were twins, said it was too risky. He hesitated. So Carnes suffocated her. No noise, no struggle. Wrapped her in her own clothes, stuffed her in a suitcase, and dumped her overboard from a waist deck that wasn't monitored. Rachel pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. He kept Rayleigh hidden in his cabin bathroom till the ship docked in Key West. Drugged her lightly just enough to keep her quiet, and told her Millie was dead. When they disembarked, he used a disguise. Sunglasses, fake beard, different clothes, slipped out in the early rush with families. From there, they moved her constantly Key West to Florida, then up to North Carolina, staying one step ahead. Rachel's voice was barely a breath. He'd seen us before, hadn't he? Alvarez nodded grimly. Evans says he mentioned seeing twin girls in Virginia months earlier, called them perfect for the next edition. We think he planned this for a long time. Rachel thought of the lighter with the letter K. Was that some twisted calling card? Coincidence? Evans said it was hers got mixed in with Millie's things when Carnes was rushing to dispose of the body. She'd been missing it for months. Her gaze slid to the sleeping form in the hospital bed. They can't ever get out. And every last one of those magazines needs to be destroyed. No child should live knowing those images exist. We're already working with federal agencies, Alvarez assured her. This is bigger than just Carnes and Evans, but I promise you they will pay. He squeezed her shoulder steady but firm. Get some rest. You'll need it when she wakes. Die. The time he left, exhaustion dragged at Rachel's bones. She sank back into the chair beside her daughter's bed, gripping the tiny hand as if it were an anchor. Somewhere between the fear and rage, she felt a fragile spark of relief. Her little girl was alive. Morning came in slivers of pale light through the thin hospital curtains. Rachel blinked awake, neck aching from the night in the chair. For a heartbeat, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back like a flood. Her daughter was still asleep, color faintly returning to her cheeks. A tray of untouched hospital breakfast sat on the side table. A soft knock, then Dr. Patel stepped in, followed by a nurse. "Morning, Mrs. Marin. How did she sleep?" Rachel shook her head. Restless. Nightmares. She kept talking in her sleep. That's expected, Dr. Patel said, scanning the chart. The sedatives in her system are wearing off. We'd like to run more tests today with your permission. Anything she needs, Rachel said quickly, while the doctor worked. Officer Martinez appeared in the doorway, her own eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. Detective Alvarez is on his way with an update. Rachel gave a tired but grateful smile. Thank you for staying all night. Just my job, Martinez replied, though her voice softened. In all my years, I've never seen a case like this. You're lucky to have her back. Rachel's eyes fell on her daughter. If I were lucky, I wouldn't have lost Millie at all. Martinez's face flickered with regret. Sorry, that was no Rachel, interrupted quietly. You're right in a way. Many parents never get answers. At least I know what happened. It's a bitter kind of luck. Dr. Patel finished her checkup. Vitals are improving. The sedatives are nearly gone, but the malnutrition is severe. We're starting a careful diet today. She'll need a few more days here, plus ongoing care after. Rachel nodded, already bracing for the road ahead. An hour later, her daughter stirred, eyes fluttered open, glazed with confusion, till they found Rachel. Mom, I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. Tears welled. Millie. Where's Millie? Rachel's chest ached. Before she could answer, Alvarez appeared in the doorway, his expression grave but edged with purpose. May I come in? I asked gently. Rachel nodded, grateful for the delay. He removed his hat and stayed a respectful distance from the bed. Morning, Rachel. I thought you'd both want to know. We hit another property belonging to Douglas Carnes early this morning. Asterisk, it was on Cedar Island, the very place he had planned to take her yesterday, according to ferry station records. 3 more children were found there, all rescued from captivity. Rachel's breath hitched. Are they okay? They're receiving medical attention as we speak, Alvarez replied. Some have been missing for over a year. Still working on identifying them and notifying their families. A fierce, almost primal satisfaction surged through Rachel. And Carnes Evans? Are they talking? Evans has confessed completely, Alvarez confirmed. In exchange for some leniency at sentencing, she said she couldn't live with the guilt any longer. She always knew it was wrong, even while helping her husband coordinate everything. From here in Carnes? Still uncooperative? But with Evans's testimony and the evidence we've secured, he's facing multiple life sentences. Rachel's jaw tightened. Good. I hope they rot in prison. Even her Evan she kept my daughter locked away for months. Rachel's voice broke, unable to finish the thought. She faced serious charges, Alvarez. Assured cooperation might reduce her time, but she won't walk free. Rachel's eyes drifted toward the doorway where her daughter lay. What happens now? We'll need a formal statement from you and when she's ready from her too, but there's no rush. Her recovery is the priority. Rachel nodded. Thank you, Detective. For everything. Alvarez's voice softened. In my years on this job, I've seen too many cases end badly. Finding a child alive, it's rare. I'm glad she's home. After Alvarez left Rachel, returned to her daughter's bedside. The girl was awake, eyes wide and unblinking, as if afraid her mother might vanish again. Mom, she whispered. Millie's gone. Isn't she really gone? Rachel took a steadying breath, sat down, and clasped her small hand. Yes, sweetheart, Millie is gone. The bad man hurt her very badly. Asterisk tears shimmered in her daughter's eyes. I knew it. He told me she was gone, but I didn't want to believe him. I thought maybe she was somewhere else, like me. You'd find both of us. I wish we had, Rachel, said, her own tears falling. I looked for you every single day. I never stopped. I was so scared, her daughter whispered, after they took us. And Millie was gone. They kept moving me to different places. They changed how I looked. They made me stand still while they took pictures. If I cried, they'd hit me. They said if I ever tried to run or tell anyone, they'd hurt you too. Rachel wrapped her arms around her, careful of the IV. You were so brave. You don't have to be scared anymore. You're going to prison for a very long time. I can't hurt you or anyone else ever again. For a long while, they held each other, mother and daughter, their grief for Millie tangled with their relief at being together again. Eventually, the medication made her daughter drowsy, and she drifted to sleep in Rachel's arms. As Rachel laid her gently against the pillows, she noticed a small scar near her. Hairline, a faint but permanent mark of the horrors she'd endured these past 10 months. It was a scar that spoke of stolen innocence, shattered security, and the sister she would never see again. But as Rachel studied her sleeping face, she also saw something else's strength. It's the same unyielding spirit that had kept her alive. The road ahead would be long therapy sessions, nightmares, moments when grief would feel unbearable. There would be Millie's funeral, days when the loss threatened to consume them both. And yet, for the first time in 10 long months, Rachel felt a flicker of hope. They would rebuild. They would carry Millie's memory forward. And they would heal. We're going to be okay, she whispered, brushing the hair from her daughter's forehead. Somehow, someday, we'll be okay. Outside, the morning sun rose higher, burning away the shadows, a silent promise that even after the blackest night, the dawn will always come.